All right, what's up everyone? This is Don, Third Creative, and this is the walkthrough tutorial video for Swerve multi-sport Photoshop template. In this video, I'm going to walk you through all the layers, cover all the processes. I'm going to be super thorough and hopefully cover anything and everything that you might need to know in order to create the best images possible using this design. Before we jump into it, one thing I want to touch on is that due to having 12 texture options, 10 of them being sport specific, 2 of them non-sport specific, it made the file size a little large, and so rather than using the traditional PSD Photoshop file or format, I did go with PSB, which is the large document Photoshop file. So just a little tip to make the file size smaller and a little easier to work with. As soon as you open the file, you can come to this folder here, center letter options, and look for the texture that you want to use for the project. So you can see they're labeled volleyball, golf, paper texture, softball, etc. So once you identify the texture that you want to use, so for this example we could say soccer ball, you can select, highlight, and delete all of the other textures and leave just the one that you're working with, and that will bring the file size down significantly. You can then go to File, Save As, and retitle it so that you're not overwriting your master file. Keep your master file with all of the texture options in it, and just change the name and save it wherever you want to, and you can save it as a PSD file. Most of you should know, but if you hit File, Save As, you'll see it says large document format. Click this little window here, select Photoshop, and like I said, change the name and you can save. So just a little quick tip to make the file a little smaller and easier to work with. But let's jump into it. I usually like to start at the very bottom, and so we've got our background layers folder that we'll open up, and we'll take a look at what we have. Got change background color. So the background color in this case is actually just this lower white section. If you double click this icon, you'll get your color picker, and you can use this to select the color that you want for the lower background. Very simple, very easy. Next we have a subfolder entitled background shape layers, and so if I turn that off, you can see that it's these oval shape layers that make this curved or swerve effect. So I've got 3 shape layers in here, and as you can see by colors, we've got color overlays clipped to each one so you can see which is which. So if you want or need to change the color of any of these, you can just do the same thing. Double click on the color overlay icon here to get your color picker pulled up, and you can set it to any color that you like. Each shape layer has a drop shadow, and that's what creates this kind of 3-dimensional look. So you do have the option to turn those off if you want more of a flat look. But that is completely up to you, just an option. We'll close that up and take a look at the next one that we have, which is our corner accent layers. So if I turn that off, you can see we lose the upper left and lower right corner accents. Now these are also shape layers. I set this up so that you can not open this folder and just customize everything with the layer styles that are applied to the folder itself. And so by doing it that way, it saves you from having to customize the bottom one and then go and do the same thing for the top one. So even though we've got a lot here, drop shadows, bevel, emboss, you really only probably need to work with this color overlay and these 2 strokes. So let me demonstrate by clicking on the word color overlay to get our layer style panel, and as you can see, it went ahead and pulled up under the color overlay tab. So if you want to change the color of these corners, same thing, click on the little color icon to get your color picker pulled up, select the color that you want. Once you have it, hit OK, and as you can see, it's applying to both the upper and the lower. Cancel that. Before you close out of this window, you can go ahead and customize your stroke layers, these colored outline that you see here. So if you click on the bottom one, you can see this is the white or the outer. Same thing, double click the icon, pick the color that you want. It will update. You can play around with the size if you want to, but more than likely you'll just leave it as is, and then you can go ahead and come up to the next one, which is the inner stroke, and change the color to whatever you're looking for. Pretty simple, pretty easy. I will say, if there is a scenario where you want to do something different on the bottom than the top, you can do that. Basically you have everything but the drop shadows set up on each. So what you would want to do is turn off the top 4 layer styles on the folder, and then you would turn all of these on, and you can set them up independently. But if you have these turned on the folder level, it will supersede anything that is down here within the folder, if that makes sense. So got some options there. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Next we have our background texture, and that's covering all of this up. So it's a little subtle, but if I zoom in, you can kind of see the texture there. If I turn it off, you can see that it goes away. We also have a subtle grain texture, which really doesn't show up in white, but shows up more in the midtones and darker colors. And so I can come over here and let you see up close. If I turn that off, you can see how it changes a little bit. But it just adds a little bit of a grainy paper texture. So if you want, you can leave those on there. If you want to remove them and have just a nice clean surface, you can just turn those off. Completely up to you. But that is everything within the background layers. Pretty simple. Next we have our upper horizontal text bar. If I turn that off, you can see it disappears. So it's referring to this up here. Let's take a quick look at that. There is a drop shadow on the folder level. So that's where you get this 3-dimensional look here. You can turn that off if you wish, or if you double click on it, you can modify the distance, size, and opacity if you feel the need to. More than likely not, but what you will want to do is open this folder, and you'll have your team name text layer. So it's pretty simple. Double click on this icon here to highlight your text, and let's say we're going to change it to Coyote Basketball. Now if you want to retain the look that I had originally, where one word is one color, another word is another color, you would simply before you hit enter or this check mark, just come up here, click and drag and highlight the portion that you want to change. And once you have that highlighted, either up here or in your character panel, you can click on the color icon. You can select the color you want, or if you already have the color in your background, you can sample. You can, to get a starting point, modify it, and you can change the color that way. Once you have it how you want it, you can hit the check mark or hit enter. You may or may not want to adjust this. So if you go to your move tool, you can click on an anchor point, then click and drag to make it a little larger. Of course, you can change the size in your character panel as well. You can hold down shift, click in the center to move left, move right. Get it how you want it. Then if you want to change the size and position of the whole thing, you can select the entire folder. Also with your move tool, click on an anchor point. I hold down shift to maintain proportion, scale it down, move it over. Most cases you may not want to do this, but when I was making some sample images, I found myself wanting to adjust it a little bit. And so that's how you would go about it. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The last thing is that this shape layer, which is this bar, you can click on the side anchor point and drag out if you need it bigger. Move it over. You can adjust that, but really you just mostly will likely want to possibly change the color. So you would just click on the word color overlay. You get your layer style, just like all of the layers before. You change it the same way. And that is it. So let's get it back the way that it was. We'll close that up. And we'll take a look at the next folder, which is our center letter options. This is a big one because this is where all of those options are that we talked about when we started this video. And so at this point, you would probably just have one option in here because good chance you would have deleted all the ones that you're not using, but we can kind of go through them and take a look at each one individually. We have volleyball texture, which you probably would want to keep white, but if you did want to change the color, you could click on hue saturation. I have colorize checked, so you could boost the saturation level, reduce the lightness and darkness, and just work these three sliders to get to a color that you like if you decide you want to do that. More than likely you want to leave it white, but something else that is affecting the texture is the levels adjustment. So if you want the darks darker, you can move this anchor to the right. If you want the lights lighter, you can move this one to the left or all the way. And same thing with your midtones. You can move this around to fine tune it even more if you feel the need to. And that applies to all of these. But that's how all of these textures are set up, with the exception of this paper texture. Paper texture I did a little bit differently. I do have a levels adjustment to control the contrast, and this is super subtle. So this is an option that's non-sport specific. So if you're doing something that there isn't a specific texture for, it could be cheer, it could be band, it could be, I don't know, anything outside of the sports that I did cover. This is an option that you can use, and if you zoom in a little bit, you can kind of see what you're working with. But this one, what I did is I set the blend mode to multiply, and so to change the color, you could just simply change the color of the actual text layer down here. So we have white, and that's why you see white now, but if you come up into your character panel, or if you were to double click to highlight the text and come up here, either way you can change the color of the text, but let's just use this so that we can see a live demonstration. Or real time what it looks like. So you can change your color, and once you do that, if you feel that the texture is showing up enough, you can leave everything as it is. But if the texture is too bold, or if it's not prominent enough, you can come up here and you can fine tune it using the levels adjustment. And I kind of already touched on it a little bit, but just crash course. This controls your darks, this one controls your lights, this one controls your midtones. So you can boost those darks if you want them to show a little bit more. If it darkens it too much, you can move the lights a little more to the left, and it's just controlling the level of contrast and how prominent this texture is. So you can fine tune it if you want to, and if you feel that there is a need to, but it's completely up to you. We'll go back, and that's it. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. They do have levels, and you can change the colors with the hue saturation if you want to. I actually don't have a hue saturation on the softball texture. Maybe I should put one on there, but I really felt like if you're using this softball, you're not going to want to change the color. You're going to want to stick with the original color of the softball so that it looks right. But I guess since I'm bringing it up, it's pretty simple. If you were to, let's see, the way I do it is just to hit Control or Command U, and it adds a smart filter, hue saturation. You can click Colorize, And then again, you can work the lightness and darkness, all three sliders, to get the color that you want. It's pretty easy to do that. But everything else has a levels and a hue saturation. So I don't think we need to cover all of them. We do have this water, so if you double click on hue saturation, you can adjust. Now you'll notice that it got darker because in this preview it's not going to factor in the levels adjustment, but it will allow you to fine-tune the color that you want. You also have the option to just turn off the hue saturation with this little eyeball icon. You can turn it off and it goes to its original color, which is very similar but just a little bit different. And I think pretty much same thing with the ice. I've got the saturation down quite a bit, I believe. Yeah, so you can really boost it if you want a more, which the levels I think is kind of desaturating it. So it's just working with the levels and the hue saturation, fine-tuning it, getting it to the level of contrast or lightness and darkness and the color that you're looking for. And then I think maybe the last one I'll touch on is the jersey texture, which right now the hue saturation is turned off. If you turn it on, it automatically goes to this orange, but it works the same exact way. Double clicking on the word hue saturation here will bring this up, and you can just pick the color that you want, adjust the lightness and darkness and the level of saturation if you need to. And again, I have a levels adjustment that is affecting it. It's brightening it quite a bit. So you can turn that off if you want, or you can fine tune it if you want. All right, I think we've more than sufficiently covered and explained how all of these textures work. So let's move on. Next layer that we have here is our exposure vignette. So it's an exposure adjustment layer, and it's got a gradient mask on here, and it applies a vignette effect. So you can see the corners are a little dark. It's harder to notice on this corner and this corner because it's already black, but let's add this effect. If you turn it off, you can see it lightens it a little bit. So you can leave it on, leave it off, or double click here to adjust how dark or light it is. You can get carried away, so just be careful with that. You can also click on the anchor point here, and I'm going to hold down Shift, Option and Shift, or you can just control each side independently on how close or how far away it is. So you can see it just subtly changes how much of the effect. So that may be more customization than most of you want to do, but it is something that I do sometimes, just depending on the color scheme that I go with and how much of the effect that I want or don't want. You can fine tune. Next, we have our subject images folder. This is very straightforward, very simple. A few things that I will touch on. I guess first things first, the obvious, this is where you place your subject images. So you would want to, if you drag and drop them or however they end up in here, you would just want to make sure, like if you drag and drop and it ends up here, just make sure that you drop it into this folder. So it already has a layer mask, which is a gradient mask applied, and that's why you see the fade to transparency where it's at. If you were to do a full body image, which is an option, and you may or may not have seen it already, but I have a sample image somewhere in here. There we go. So you can kind of see an option of what it might look like if you did decide to show feet, which some of you may want to. You would hold down Shift and click on this icon here, this layer mask, and that disables the layer mask. Another way is to just right click on it and hit disable layer mask. So if you're doing full body, you'll want to disable the layer mask. There is a drop shadow, so I will say the drop shadow doesn't look right if you do full body. So if you're doing full body, you will not only want to disable the layer mask, but you will also want to turn off the drop shadow because you would be creating your own contact shadows, which are nice and subtle, but you can see kind of what I'm talking about here. So if you add that drop shadow in there, it'll look wonky. So don't want to do that. What else? Let's talk about this layer mask here. This is a gradient mask, and I always try to make the default gradient mask, set it up in a way where it's going to work for most people in most cases. However, I do get a lot of emails asking how they can move it up higher, move it lower, make it a quicker transition or a longer transition. It's very simple. I probably just need to make an independent video on gradient masks just by itself, but usually I'll just quickly touch on it, and I will now. So if you select the layer mask, then select your gradient tool. So it looks like this. If you don't have it in your panel here, you can go up to Window and you can find it and you can apply it. So let's see. Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. What you want to do is select your gradient tool, and you'll see your gradient picker, or if you double click here, or actually if you just click, you'll see that this comes up. The main thing is that you're working with black to white or white to black, either way, because black conceals and white reveals. So as long as you're working with white to black or black to white, you're good. With your layer mask selected, really all it is a matter of clicking where you want it to begin and where you want it to end. And so I'll click way down here and I'll drag up. See how it kind of moves? If you hold down Shift, it kind of locks it in place, and let go when you like what you have. If you don't like what you have, you can come back. If you still see these, you can just come back and move these however you want. Hold down Shift. You can also grab this middle anchor and adjust how quick the transition is if you want to. But let's say you went and did something else, and then you come back and you want to adjust it. Well, those are no longer there. You can easily just do the same thing. Well, they are there now, but sometimes they're not. And so you can just start over, and it will supersede and overwrite whatever you had. So it's very quick, very easy to adjust. You may want to do this on the team image. Let's say the gradient mask that I have in there for your rows doesn't fit, doesn't work. Maybe it needs to be higher, a little bit lower. You want it to show a little bit more. Very easy to adjust these. And that's it for the subject images. Last one that we have, the lower text layer. So there's a little bit here to look at. We'll open it up. First things first, we've got our subject name, which in this case is Molly Tack. If you're using automation, this part is kind of tricky to do first name in one color, last name in another color. So if you're using automation, you'll probably just go with one single color, but you can manually highlight and select and change the color, kind of like what we were talking about earlier about this upper text. I will say another thing, this particular font, and actually this applies to this center letter that's behind the subject as well. I went with a font called Samton as the default font. One reason I did that is because I thought it looked good, but it's also not only free for commercial use, but it is a font family. And so when you're in your character panel, if you come over here to this drop down window, you can see all of the options that you have. You can go, with this extra condensed light. You've got 3 versions of extra condensed, which I have it on extra condensed bold. If you want it wider, you can go with condensed bold, and you can make it super wide with extra extended bold, which probably is a little bit too much, but you have a lot of options, not only with any of these text layers, including the background one, but you also have the option, this is something that I didn't touch on and probably should have, with your center letter. So if I close this up and we go back to the center letter and you come down here, Maybe this font just doesn't fit the team that you're working with. Maybe they have a specific font that they use. Maybe it just doesn't look good to you, and if that's the case, depending on the letter that you have in there and however you set it up, you can absolutely just pick any other font that you want. You come up to what you have, and you can just use your arrow key to work through all of these fonts. I mean, these are just fonts that I have in here. You can specifically find and download a font that you want to try to see if you like the way that it looks. But I felt like this particular font was not only commercial free, but it looked good as the standard font. But you have the freedom to use any font that you want. So just keep that in mind. But back to the lower text layer. So we got our subject name, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We have a subtext here, and I always do this. I set it up with senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. If you're using automation, you'll probably use this first one, rename it, and that way it just knows which layer to change what it says. But I went ahead and set the kerning to a level that I thought was good, meaning the distance between each character. You can adjust that if you want to, but all of these are very simple to change the colors in your character panel. You can do that, or if you highlight your text, you can come up here. So very simple, very easy. Next we have our lower badge, which a little bit to talk about here. What do we have this? Okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So lower badge is a subfolder, and it has a drop shadow. So you can turn that off, you can turn it on, you can double click drop shadow, and you can adjust it if you feel the need to: opacity, distance, size. Those are the three things that you would likely play around with. But drop shadow is an option if you want it. But inside I have the center letter, and so you can see I went with the B, and this is a different font. This is Helene. It says demo, but it is a commercial free font. You can change the font, but this is actually a good place to insert the logo if you have one. And I think I have some examples. So here I went with a different font. So here you can see I inserted their logo. So if they got a logo that will fit nicely there, that's a nice touch. Drop it in. You can see I have a logo here, a logo there. Not all of them, but a few of them. You can see the idea. So something to consider. So you would simply just turn that off and drag and drop the logo right here in its place, scale and position it to your liking. But this one, if you use it, you would change the color the same way, but it does have a stroke outline. So if you double click on the word stroke here, you can change the color of the outline. You can also change the size if you want it bigger or smaller. Pretty simple. It has its own separate drop shadow, which you can turn on and off. And then the year, here shortly it'll be 2026, so you probably want to change it. So if you just double click on it, and you can just highlight this last letter and change it to whatever, I say letter, character, digit, change it to 26 or whatever year it is that you need. I went ahead and created spacing in between so that it lands on both sides. You can hit the space bar if you need a little bit more. You can hit the back space if you need a little bit less. Another thing you could do is highlight this section, come up here to your character panel to the kerning, and slide left, slide right, increase and decrease the value to control the amount of space. And that's just a way to fine tune it if you need to. And then change the color the same way. Very simple. Then we have our shape layer, which is this back plate. So I'm going to select the move tool. I can click on this side anchor, and we can center it up. You can make it wider if you want to. You can make it taller if you want to, but more than likely you just want to change the color, maybe. If you don't want this default black, just click on the color overlay, layer style. You'll get this window. Click on the little color icon and select the color you want. Very simple, very straightforward. So that is it. This is a relatively easy one to customize and to work with, which is always nice. Nice clean look. But hopefully, I was super thorough, but hopefully covered anything and everything. I guess a few things before we wrap it up that we'll touch on. The team image. So team image and the memory mate. So to make the memory mate, you need a team image. So you want to start with your 5x4 horizontal file. And all of this is exactly the same as the vertical individual, with the exception of the subject image folder. So here we've got a show feed option. So I went ahead and put a sample image in there just so you can kind of see. So you just select the one that you want to work with. So most of you are going to hide feet, and so you'll leave it the way that it is and open up the subfolder entitled hide feet. So I've got 2 rows in here, and I've got sample rows inside. So we talked about gradient mass already, so you can adjust these if you want to, but I kind of set them up, to work for this team. Now granted, this team only has 11 athletes, and so you might be working with a whole lot more athletes, maybe less. So you can turn off one and just go to single row. You can do 2 rows. You can adjust the gradient masks for each row, but you can also hold down shift, click and drag, which actually not shift, is alt or option, excuse me, and you can make another row. You can select it with your move tool and you can move it up, which actually I'm working with the first row, but it's that simple to make rows. You just have to arrange them how you want them and adjust the gradient masks like I demonstrated a little bit earlier with the individual. So that's just a question that I run into occasionally, and I figured it would be good to just touch on it. But once you have it customized, built how you want it, save it as a JPEG, and now you can work with the memory mate file, which is pretty straightforward. We have our subject image where you would drop them in just like the individual. We have their name and grade or class. We've got the lower badge just like the individual. You would just place your subject images here, scale them how you want them. You can adjust the gradient mask if you need to. But then you also have this folder here for your team image. So if I open that up, we have our sample team image in here. But basically, if you have one, you just drag and drop it and scale and position it how you want it. You can scale and position it exactly like this one. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can move it left, right, however you want it. It has a drop shadow on it, which creates that 3D effect a little bit, 3-dimensional, but that is how the memory mate works. So, all right, finally, that is it. Hopefully I covered anything and everything that you might need to know. But if not, if there's something that you still need help with, feel free to reach out. You can reach me by email at don@thirdcreative.com, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. So that's all that I have for this one. It's time to move on to the next one, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.